There are birds of a different color. They're the brightest cast of characters in the Australian story. They routinely get the best of farmers. They try to outwit each other.
We actually caught them out playing a little mating game of their own.
There is complicated thought going in that big head of theirs.
Rowdy and resourceful, they're Australian originals. They're parrots in the land of Oz. In these forests, a brilliant array of parrots adapted crafty beaks and dexterous toes to crack the rich bounty of seeds and fruit. The tiniest of all, the fig parrot, gorges on fruit bigger than its head. The general rule for the males here is to be as colorful as needs be to attract a mate, without becoming a neon lure to predators. The king parrot is brash, while the green feathers of the red-cheeked parrot blend into the foliage. He relies on his sexy red head and bright beady eyes to get the females. The male is green and the female red. So strikingly different are they that for a long time people thought that the two must be separate species.
Well, I've disturbed them now.
A good hollow is hard to find, and the female guards hers fiercely.
We've spent a lot of time just watching her at the...
Rob's favorite female is not taking any chances with her hollow, and doesn't budge for the entire 9-month breeding season. She is totally reliant on the male to bring her food.
A bit like Meals on Wheels. She's acting like an invalid, staying at home. The males are out there doing all of the work, coming and going all day long, purely for the right to regurgitate some food to her. And of course, they're hoping to get sex in return. The idea that they all had a chance of being the dads, and that would give them extra incentive to go off and find the food.
But DNA tests on the chick's feathers reveal something astonishing. Of the 24 young she's produced in the last 8 years, 19 are from the same super stud male.
Attending more than one female, and some of them had 3 or 4 different females that they were visiting and feeding and indeed mating with. So by following them around the landscape, we actually caught them out playing a little argy-bargy.
With such different lifestyles, the huge color difference between the sexes makes a lot of sense.
The male's green, very important for them to remain camouflaged when they go across country, getting food from the fruiting trees. Males seem to use the red under their wings very judiciously to get the female's attention. Long distance signal. She shines like a beacon. It screams at other birds, especially females. Keep away, this hollow is occupied. Don't bother coming near because I will beat you up.
No other bird in the world mates like this. To survive on the desert edge, red-tailed black cockatoos stick to the few tree-lined watercourses. As the sun drops, the birds arrive from all directions. With breeding hollows scarce, most of these cockies are single. The local watering hole is their pickup joint, and the evening quickly turns into a boisterous party. Younger birds flirt by displaying the color banding on their tails and raising their crests. These fancy pop-up crests are what distinguish cockatoos from the other parrots. These opportunistic... The galahs were quick to take advantage of the new foods. They went just about everywhere, eating almost anything. Today, there's barely a patch of Australia without these extroverted cockies. But the opportunistic galahs were not the only ones to try new foods. The less common Major Mitchell cockatoos have recently acquired a taste for paddy melons. These inquisitive birds have little trouble working out some fancy footwork to break into the fruit. Their new cuisine arrived as part of an exotic smorgasbord. And wherever they went, they brought a whole range of new opportunities for parrots to exploit. Paddy melons were introduced to feed the camels of the Afghan traders as they traveled the outback supplying the isolated properties. It soon worked out that where there was stock feed. All this free fast food made life pretty cushy for generations of cockatoos, and their numbers boomed. Man-made water holes helped parrots spread and survive where they couldn't have done before. Ringneck parrots, budgerigars, pale-headed rosellas all come in to drink in family groups. Mulga parrots can live in waterless areas, but no one in the outback turns down a free drink. Rain rarely falls in the Australian deserts. Droughts can last for over a decade. Water holes turn to mud. And cockatiels celebrate with a rain dance. The Australian desert. Budgerigars. We keep them in cages, but in the wild, budgies roam the vast outback. When it rains, in the budgie mating game, you need to be camouflaged while feeding on the ground, but still flashy enough to impress a potential mate. And the way budgies see each other's feathers is different than the way we see them. We see in red, green, and blue, but budgies have a fourth cell in their eye that enables them to see ultraviolet. When UV rays hit some parts of the budgie's plumage, they give off a reflective glow. It's a fair bet the female will choose the brightest, sexiest male. Especially if he can fight, too. With his rival dispatched, the male can now get down to the serious business of wooing the female. Not only do budgies have highly reflective UV markings, some parts of their plumage actually become fluorescent. Their necks and heads in particular. The feathers don't lie. And if she does, he treats her to dinner by regurgitating food into her mouth. Over a few days, she'll lay about 6 eggs that will hatch in just a couple of weeks. She feeds her blind, naked chicks a rich, milk-like liquid. They grow rapidly. Within 12 days, their wing feathers come through. And after only 4 weeks, they're almost ready to leave the nest. Incredibly, these chicks will be ready to breed in just 60 days after hatching. It's a super quick turnaround to get the young out of the nest while the going is good. But it could be all over in an instant. At 6 feet, the parenti is Australian. In the air, they're not weak. The birds of prey follow. Each hunter looks for a weak link. But it's not always life and death for Australia's parrots. Galahs seem to have plenty of time for clowning around. That they become, for a time, Australia's most numerous parrot. Accounts by the early settlers tell of flocks so big that they blackened the sky. There is one that manages to survive above the snowline. Green rosellas fuel up on alpine berries against the winter blizzards. If you're a rock parrot, you must learn to like your plants heavily salted. Living in the salt spray zone is not an easy life, but these hardy parrots are tough customers. Things get coastal heath. This environment is richer, attracting gang cockatoos. Like most cockatoos, gangs are left-footed, gripping onto their windblown perch with their right leg while holding the seed pod with their left. Yellow-tailed black cockatoos also favor their left foot when tackling the large seed-bearing cones of the banksia tree. It's a tricky operation that combines brute force to slice through the tough exterior and a delicate touch to extract and shell the seeds that lie within. But within hours, currawongs are poking through the ashes. And crimson rosellas that survived the inferno are feasting on roasted eucalypt seeds. Just a few days later, eucalypts are sending out green shoots. And there's plenty of food. So it's time for crimson rosellas to start breeding again. With their bright plumage, parrots seem to be screaming out to potential predators, "Free food! Come and get it!" But whether you're a budgie, an eclectus, a rosella, or just about any other parrot, you have to take colorful risks in the mating game. Sometimes you can have the best of both worlds. These gaudy birds are in fact safely camouflaged by their leaf-like shape and green backs. Although they haven't. Some overstay their welcome. With too much time on its hands, this cockatoo pokes around an electric insulator. While the maniacal corella will attack everything in its path, even tarmac. And then, the neighbor's lawn. But such destructiveness is minor compared with... In just a week, the birds can...
And the birds have got to feed all year round. With that, they can continue to...
Where they pick apart the hay bales. Red-tailed black cockatoos join in the fun. Bunkers and protected by thick canvas. But the canvas is no match for their sharp beaks. At bay. Like children with cupcakes, they take a bite from each one, spoiling them for everybody else. Shouldered parrot. Last century, bird fanciers trapped these prized parrots and robbed their nests. This plunder left the species hanging on by a thread. Lifestyle requirements. For starters, a breeding couple needs an air-conditioned termite mound to burrow into and make a nest. When they return, Dad flies to the mound to check that all is safe. and to let the young ones know that it's mealtime. He stands guard while the female comes down to feed the chicks. An exhausting schedule when your chicks need 4 or 5 meals a day. Dad's job is to coax the 5-week-old chicks out of their cozy nest and into the big bad world. It's the dry season, which means it's Sue's property is a haven for the golden-shouldered parrot, and her efforts may be the only thing standing between them and extinction. The palm cockatoo. To when Australia was covered in rainforest. He's the granddaddy of them all. Their calls.
They've got a huge repertoire of calls that they use in display. The hello call they make.
Unlike other cockatoos, palm cockatoos don't live in flocks. They pair up with a mate and seem to stick with them for life. And they could live for up to 90 years. One cockatoo in captivity had her first chick at 54. But to get the girl, the male must be a man of property, with a portfolio of good nesting hollows. And if he wants any chance of mating, she must be persuaded that he's strong enough to build her several magnificent nests.
All the elements of a palm cockatoo display are designed to draw attention to that massive beak. The blushing of the cheek patch, the wing spreading which makes them bigger. It's all designed to show other cockatoos that they're strong, and the pinnacle of their strength is in their beak.
Essentially, he is trying to prove that he is a blue-chip investment, and that she can feel comfortable putting all her eggs in his basket.
They join up every morning and afternoon at these nest hollows. And they catch up on the day's events, and it really does sound like you're listening to an old married couple sometimes. I mean, the analogy continues. It's just like humans and the pride that humans have in their houses. Palm cockatoos are exactly the same. You know, there's something that she's picking up in the way that the drumming sound resonates inside the hollow. We don't really know, but, I mean, she watches very intently.
The choosy males will try 2 or 3 different drumsticks before they settle on one they really like.
When they actually perform the drumming display at the nest, it does seem to have a rhythm. But when he's finished with it, he'll often sit at the edge of the hollow and splinter up the stick and add it to the nesting platform that's inside the hollow.
If the female is impressed, she will walk down and join him at the entrance of the nest to see if it's good enough to breed in. With the hollow approved, they can fly off to have a morning snack. The local birds gather at trees that are fruiting.
That really powerful beak that palm cockatoos have, which is by far the biggest beak of any of the cockatoos, it allows them to eat foods that other cockatoos and other animals in general just simply can't access. I think palm cockatoos are very intelligent. You've only got to watch a pair courting at their nest or a male fashioning a drumstick to realise that there is complicated thought going in that big head of theirs.
Of course, these regal palm cockatoos are not the only clever ones. All parrots are smart. But these are the oldest, the closest living relatives of the ancestral cockatoos that first evolved in Australia some 20 million years ago. From these northern tropical rainforests, parrots began winging their way all across the continent, adapting to every corner of the country. There's no greater richness and diversity.